two of the best defensive teams. Should be more like a Final Four. How much of a fraud BYU was. This was a really back and forth, close game. I'm Sully with the Sidekick, and this is Sports of Sully. With the first two rounds of March Madness finished, we're going to be talking about some of the big games and upsets, and also preview some of the big games in the Sweet 16 coming up. So starting with the surprises of the first round, some of the big surprises. Number one, 12 seed High Point took down 5 seed Wisconsin. This was kind of an upset. Obviously, it's a seed upset, but High Point had this crazy good offense that no one really knew how it would kind of translate playing a bigger team and a better team. But they really showed that they can really hang with some of the big teams. Wisconsin was a really good 5 seed coming into this. I thought they even had a chance to get a 4 seed. They were coming in really hot, led by John Blackwell and Nick Boyd at the guard position. And they were playing great, but High Point really just shot the lights out in the second half of this game. Wisconsin led for most of this game. They had a 10-point lead. They kind of were controlling it late. High Point just completely took over from 3 and really just took over this game. Had a layup with about 10 seconds left in this game. Wisconsin got blocked at the rim, got a few stops at the end, and High Point took down Wisconsin. The second upset I don't think is really an upset, but it is a seed upset. Number 11 Texas took down number 6 BYU. Texas really showed just how much of a fraud BYU was, just because AJ DeBansa got his. He had 35 and 10 double-double. He really went crazy, but no one outside of BYU could do anything outside of AJ DeBansa. Robert Wright, their point guard, is one of the most inconsistent players in college basketball. He didn't have a good game, and Texas's size really took over in this game, and Dalen Swain also had a great game. And a few crazy games that happened, just a few crazy endings in this first round of March Madness. The first one, the best game, I think, of the whole tournament so far was Kentucky and St. Clara. Kentucky was a 7 seed. They were a little bit of a favorite over Santa Clara. This was a really back and forth close game in the first half, and really in this pretty much this whole game. Kentucky, with 11 seconds left, were down by 2. Otega Owe got into the paint, got a pretty easy layup to tie the game. Santa Clara takes the ball down the court with 3 seconds left. Alan Graves, the freshman, hits a big three-pointer on the right wing, and they kind of go to celebrate. They kind of didn't really lock in for the last possession. You could see Santa Clara's coach was trying to call a timeout. The refs didn't hear him. Kentucky got the ball inbounds really quick, and probably about 2 steps past half court, Otega Owe throws up a heave, and it goes in off the backboard. Crazy shot, sends it to overtime. Kentucky would kind of dominate in overtime and end up beating Santa Clara. Just a crazy shot, and really a shot that really just shows how crazy March Madness can get. Moving to the second round. The second round had just some crazy games. The first one I want to know is Iowa taking on number 1 seed Florida. And Florida really got off to a really bad start. Iowa got off to about a 10-point lead in this first half, and then Florida would kind of go on a run, cut it to about 2 at halftime, and then Iowa would come out, have a great start to the second half, take a 12-point lead, but then Florida would come back. But Iowa would just always have an answer, it seemed like. Florida was up by 4 with about 2 minutes to go in this game, and Iowa would just keep making shots and kind of just keep staying in this game. Iowa is one of the slowest paced teams in the country. Bennett Sturts at point guard really likes to slow it down. They don't get in transition a whole lot. They really kind of threw off Florida's game. So late in this game, with about 8 seconds left in the game, Iowa had the ball. They were down by 2, and their coach draws up just a great play. They get it into Bennett Sturts. He's on the run, so he has momentum, and he kicks it out for a corner 3. There's really no one near him, and he nails the 3. Florida down by 1. They call a timeout. There's 4 seconds left in the game. Xavier Lee drives in. He looks like he was going to pull it for 3. Doesn't. Drives in. Florida ends up not even getting a shot off at the end. And Iowa takes down probably the biggest upset so far in March Madness. 9 seed Iowa takes down number 1 seed Florida. Another crazy round of the second round was 5 seed St. John's taking on 4 seed Kansas, and you knew this was just going to be the battle of if Kansas could get their offense going and if St. John's defense could shut them down. And early in this game, St. John's really just dominated this game. Kansas could not get anything going. It was really just Darren Peterson making tough three-pointers, which is just not a consistently good way to run your offense. He was making some tough shots in the first half that really kind of kept them in this game, but Bryce Hopkins for St. John's really is not known as a shooter, but he was really just nailing threes. He had 6 threes in this game, and St. John's was really just dominating in the paint. Dylan Mitchell and Zuby Ejiofor really had some easy layups in the paint, and they were really dominating inside. Kansas was down by as much as 14, and Kansas kind of clawed back into this game. They subbed in Cole Rosario, who I think should play more. He is a freshman. He's really young, makes some really bad mistakes. But he had a corner 3 late in this game. He had a rebound and a putback. That was huge for Kansas. Kansas, weirdly enough, had a really hard time inbounding the ball in this game. Trey White, the point guard, really had a tough time. They were turning the ball over, couldn't even get it past half court a few times, and that really hurt them in this game. But Darren Peterson, late in this game, made some incredible plays. Kansas ended up tying the game with 11 seconds left, and Kansas only had committed 3 team fouls. So they had 3 fouls to give before St. John's would be in the bonus. So pretty much St. John's would inbound the ball, and Kansas would wait a few seconds and foul, and they did that a few times till there was only about 3 seconds left, which makes it a lot harder for St. John's to get a quality shot. But they get the ball in to Dylan Darland, the Idaho State transfer, who has not scored the whole game. He was 0 for 4. He drives in and really was not great defense. There was no help defense. Makes a pretty tough finish at the rim, at the buzzer, and St. John's moves on with a buzzer beater layup. Now moving on, we'll talk about some of the big matchups in the Sweet 16. The first game, number 1 Duke takes on number 5 seed St. John's. It's going to be a really interesting game because Duke had that struggle in the first round against the 16 seed, and then they kind of struggled early against TCU, but then kind of pulled away. These are 2 of the best defensive teams in the country. I would have to go with Duke here. I think Duke's offense is better, and I think St. John's, what they're good at is their defense, and I think Duke's defense is even better. And I think Duke, with Cam Boozer, is going to wheel him to the win, and Duke takes down St. John's. The next game I want to talk about is probably the best game of the Sweet 16. This should not be a Sweet 16 matchup. This should be more like a Final Four or even a championship matchup. Houston, number 2 seed, takes on number 3 seed Illinois. I think Illinois is the best out of the 3 seeds, and Illinois has just been one of the best historic offenses ever. Keaton Wagler, their point guard, has just been great all year long. He's definitely going to be going top 10 in the draft. In Houston, they have a point guard also by the name of Kingston Flemings, who's been playing great. They've really just dominated their first 2 games. They took down A&M and they took down Idaho in the first round. Houston has not had a challenge yet. This is going to be their first challenge, and it's going to be a tough one. Houston's defense, I think, is better, but Illinois' offense is quite a bit better than Houston. I would have to go with Houston just because Houston has the more experience. I think Calvin Sampson is a great coach. Houston went to the championship last year, and yeah, they're really leaning on a freshman in Kingston Flemings a lot, but I do think the core around him is going to be better than Illinois' core and more experience, so I have Houston taking down Illinois. In the final game I want to talk about, I think it's the most interesting game. Number 4 seed Nebraska takes on number 9 seed Iowa. These are 2 teams I was not very high on coming into the tournament. I didn't think Nebraska had it, but they took down Vanderbilt in a nail-biter, and then Iowa took down Florida in a really close game as well. I think I'd have to go with Iowa here. I think Iowa has more experience. Bennett Sturts was in March Madness last year. He performed well for Drake. Now he comes into it with 2 big wins in the tournament, and I don't think Nebraska's shooting is better, but I think Iowa's defense is quite a bit better than Nebraska, and I think the experience from Bennett Sturts leads them to the Elite 8 as a 9 seed. And now I want to talk about my national championship pick. I think I'm between 2 teams. Arizona and Michigan looked like the 2 best teams so far in the tournament. I picked Arizona before the tournament started. I would have to lead with Arizona. I think they're just the most complete team. Michigan has the size. Arizona has the guards, the forwards, and the size to take down any team, and I think Arizona will be your national championship. So that's going to do it for today's show, talking about the March Madness Sweet 16 matchups and the first round. This is Sully, signing off.